Yes, I am excited as usual. I'm always excited, but it's always because we have cool people to talk to and interesting topics. Today we are doing what I wrote: the good, the bad, and the lazy, lazy writing. Because I see that comment pop up every now and then, and I don't think it means what most people think it means. So we brought on a panel of authors, and we're going to talk about writing and Star Wars and storytelling and yeah, it's going to be a good time right here. All right, I have an awesome group of people here, and I'm excited for us to get started. Um, so first things first, I want us to kind of go around the room and we'll introduce ourselves. And I'm going to ask, who are you? Where can we find your awesome content? And the first thing, because we have to judge you, right? So we need to hear your top three favorite Star Wars films. All right, so you give us your top three. I'll go to Monty first.
Oh, thanks, mate. My name's Monty. You can find me on TikTok as Monty Sci-Fi. You can also find me as Monty the Author on Instagram, and on Facebook it's Author Monty Harris because I'm consistent like that. My You can also find me on Amazon, as I'm sure you can find everyone else here on Amazon. And my favorite three movies are Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, and A New Hope, in that order, because that's the forgotten trilogy.
Okay,
That's the
interesting.
trilogy within trilogies.
The Bridge trilogy, but you're gonna have to toss Kenobi in there some way now.
Well, you said movies, not shows.
No, true, true. My
You know,
bad.
so
And how about you,
There we
Avery?
go.
Avery, how about you?
My name is Avery. I am the gamer author on all of my platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I can be a bit incendiary on my other platforms, so beware. You can find me also on Wattpad. I have done a lot of short fanfics, all of which won awards. I am completely bragging there because that's hard to do. The fanfics are on Mass Effect and Far Cry. And my
Oh,
favorite, my
okay.
my favorite props, my favorite three Star Wars films are in this order: Empire, Return of the Jedi, and then Revenge of the Sith.
Fire Return Jedi Revenge of the Sith.
Mhm.
Okay, okay.
I like I like
Solid bangers.
I like how Revenge of the Sith is kind of the very beginning of the Empire, and then Empire is when the rebellion is at its worst. They're at its most vulnerable, especially because it became a win. And then Return of the Jedi is such a satisfying and resoundingly good conclusion to the original trilogy. How it all kind of wraps up. Luke stays on the light side, the Death Star goes bloom, and so forth.
Okay, I like that. Uh, re Return of the Jedi was always my favorite growing up, and I still feel like it's what makes Star Wars Star Wars. Like the concept of when there's three storylines happening at the same time,
Yeah,
all of them get stalled, and then just one of them breaks through, which lets the other one, then the other one,
absolutely.
and that kind of has filtrated into all the books and things, and that's like one of the things I love the most.
Yes.
How about you, CE Groom?
Hey, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I am C Groom, and I am C Groom Writes everywhere. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok as CE Groom Writes. I like to keep it consistent. And yeah, my top three are Empire Strikes Back. That's just for me. It's almost Irvin Kershner's directing of it and the editing of it was perfection to me. Rogue One, I absolutely loved Rogue One. Can you tell I have like a kind of like a downer kind of? And my number one favorite is actually my third favorite is New Hope, just because it's of the nostalgia. It's the first one. It's the one that made me a Star Wars fan.
Oh,
So
right.
that's absolutely. I can't not have it in my top three. So.
Beautiful. Love it. And we got some love in the chat as well. Return of the Jedi definitely has one of the strongest finales. Shout out to Dixon Download. Hello there. And Travis here. Imagination, character, risk, attention to detail. Remember what became before.
Wow.
Lots of great
Legacy.
lots of great stuff. How about you, Amber? Oh, I actually can't hear you right now. You're muted. If let's see here. Sometimes I've had people have luck if they leave the room and come back into it. If there's nothing wrong and everything's plugged in. So, yes, we'll see you in a second. And hey, we have a Wild Camilla in the chat. Hello. But yeah, so while we are getting Amber's sound to keep up and start working, there we go. Yeah, let's find out about some of what. Oh, let's see if this works. Anything? No, I can't hear you. Is there a separate mic switch on the headset? Sometimes there is. In the meantime, let's have y'all kind of introduce your stories, because I'm really curious about them. This time we'll go up and we'll start with Avery. I mean, you had me at Mass Effect for one thing for sure. That's like one of the greatest trilogies of all time, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Drew Karpyshyn put his ankle in that thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, what's one of your books? How would you convince a Star Wars fan that it's worth reading?
Well, I haven't written anything original. Like, I'm doing something right now. It's called Namesake, and you can follow the development on my other socials. And straight out, it is for Star Wars fans. Star Wars is probably my biggest influence in just about how I live my life, much less write. So with Namesake, you get a very diverse ragtag crew that is massively underpowered against this overwhelmingly oppressive regime, which I will say straight, I lifted right out of Star Wars. Mr. Lucas, please don't sue me. It's an inspiration. There is a heavy emphasis on martial arts and weapons play, but I wanted to make it more grounded and more real and more realistic. Like, I wanted to strike the balance between a fun fight to watch, but not so fantastical. So a lot of it's grounded. I took a lot of inspiration from lightsaber forms, especially when it comes to weapons play and martial arts. The main thing is not mirroring, but drawing heavy inspiration from Luke's journey of self-discovery. Namesake revolves around three characters trying to figure out who they are in a world that has basically outlawed their existence. And I drew heavy inspiration from Luke like that because, the Jedi are outlawed. You cannot carry a lightsaber. You cannot use the Force. They hunt you down and kill you. And that's a lot of what Namesake revolves around. That with a heavy fantasy element. I know that's a rave. I'm an author. I believe Monty said we're not good at being brief, but there you have it. So
no, I'm excited. Now I will we will follow your career with great interest.
No, it's funny because I know there are things about writing that they're not telling me.
That's awesome. It's fun. I love storytelling. That's what brought us all together. That's why we're here. How about you, CE? I know we have something new.
Yeah, I've got brand new book, first book ever actually. It's on sale now. It's called The Sword and the Spark, and it is essentially, I asked myself the question: what if Anakin Skywalker's journey in the prequels was more like Macbeth? And so that was kind of the impetus for the novel, was just utilizing that hero's journey, the tragic hero's journey, elements of the dramatic irony that you find in Greek mythology more than you find in Shakespearean. Just kind of mashing it all up and creating this magic system and this world, and really drawing though heavily on my own love of Star Wars and that kind of sense of adventure. And there's an Order of the Silver Sword, which is the defenders of an empire. And it's a blend of science fiction and fantasy. It's that again, wizards and robots kind of, Star Wars feel, where you've got people wielding swords, but you've also got people flying ships and shooting laser weapons and things. So it's that, and you see magic against cybernetic organisms and things like that. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool. Okay.
Congratulations on your first book.
Thank you.
That's great. I've got this mental image now. I've got this mental image now of 3 Yodas sitting there going, "Deed without a name, it is not that we do." It's just absolutely brilliant.
Let me just say, I take the characters of the witches, and I have my own little fun spin on that. So I do have a prophecy style witches character in it, so it's fun.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for everyone, as soon as this ends, or whenever I receive the links to these stories, I'll put them in the paragraph for this video, so y'all can check them out if you'd like to. The premise sounds awesome. I am curious, Amber. Can I hear you now?
I don't know. Can you?
Yes, that's wonderful.
Yay!
All right, you have a little bit of catching up to do.
I know.
So, if you can give us, your name, who are you, where we can find your awesome content, your top 3 favorite Star Wars films, and then we'll have you just go straight into, what you've written and how you would convince a Star Wars fan that it's worth picking up.
Ooh, okay. I am Amber. Amber Medina is what I have here because that's what I go by on TikTok. But I'm Amber West on Twitter, and Amber West is my published name as well. So when you're looking for stuff to read, you'll look for me under Amber West. And top 3 Star Wars. So they're in no particular order because it changes. It really depends on my mood. But the top 3, I would probably go with The Last Jedi, Rogue One, and then if I'm cheating, Revenge of the Sith, if I can insert all of season 7 of Clone Wars into the right spots. And if I can't cheat, then Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
The Last Jedi is really criminally underrated. It's a great film.
I
love
love The Last Jedi. It's definitely, sometimes it's my number 1. That's why I say my top 3 is really hard to put in order because it just depends on where I'm at mentally. But The Last Jedi very often occupies the number 1 spot for me.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a great film. I wish people would quit hating on it so much because it's so well done and it's such a logical evolution of Luke's arc that it just
Yes!
The Last Jedi made me really care about Luke as a character.
There you go.
I didn't hate him in the original trilogy. Like, I'm supposed to love him in the original trilogy, but I was kind of bored. Like, he wasn't exciting for me in the original trilogy. He was perfectly fine, just wasn't someone that I connected to. But the Last Jedi Luke, that changed everything for me.
I dare say The Last Jedi made Luke plausible. It made him human, honestly. It made him a fully fleshed out, traumatized. Like, you saw the result of everything he'd been through. And we continue to see throughout the various series. But The Last Jedi, like in the original trilogy, he was kind of like cardboard cutout and very much followed the hero's journey. But in The Last Jedi, he was fully realized.
I like that.
I'm gonna say wait until you've read Shadow of the Sith because it
I have.
I haven't
loved
yet.
it.
It just
Me too, but
it was fun.
One of the things I love
Fun
is
and
that
sad.
Last Jedi Luke is basically when Yoda said, "Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny." He had touched it. He touched it in Jedi, and you have that. You see that's the lingering effect, that his impulse to react in that way out of fear is the fear that he felt back then. So it just kind of gave credence to what Yoda had said, which I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Which also gives it almost a biblical King David tie-in. And also because I've never even thought about that, connection. But also, Ryan Johnson has talked about it being very much, he was Arthur. He pulled the sword from the stone. He had his Merlin. But what happens? Being an amazing hero doesn't mean you're going to be a great king, right? Just like being a great chef doesn't mean you can farm. I mean, they're two different. There's two different things. And so, what happens when that role changes? So yeah, I'm appreciating all the Last Jedi love, because that is my favorite. And I would like to point out that was unprompted. I said nothing.
And I'll tell you something else. If that gravestone that he was looking at says Mara J. Skywalker on it,
Oh
it will become
no!
the greatest movie of all time.
There you go.
I actually have, when I try to explain to people like why he did, who are like, it's impossible that he could do what he did, like to even consider taking out Ben. I'm always like, he said that he saw him destroy everything he loved. So if you want to believe that Mara Jade exists in canon and she is at his side teaching the students at that school, and when the destruction of the school happens, that's when he loses Mara Jade.
Listen, don't you put that in the universe, okay?
That is here living rent free, exactly the way you said it.
I already lost her once.
Can't do it again.
Tying into the EU. Tying it into the EU.
And can I put forward the motion that we only refer to Clone Wars Season 7 as Episode 2.5 henceforth?
I second.
I like that.
That's a good idea.
Motion carried.
I recently did my rankings of the TV shows, and
Saw that.
some people were surprised that Clone Wars wasn't my number one. But here's the thing. If you did only season 7, it might be, but like, I don't know. I feel like, I know this is pretty off topic, but it's the consistency factor. You know what I mean? It's like Michael Jordan, go to the championship 6 times, get all 6 titles, right?
I wondered about that because I saw that TikTok, and I'm gonna do a reply video. But I was one of those who was surprised to see you put Rebels above Clone Wars. But that makes sense. With the consistency,
pound for pound, you know what I mean? And also there's like a suction factor of like, I turn on Clone Wars, I get sucked in for an arc. Turn on Rebels, I get sucked in for the season,
That's fair.
Yeah.
Like, I know what happens, but I gotta watch it again. Like, damn it.
I love Clone Wars, but there are episodes that I can skip and be fine. There are even probably some arcs that I can go, I could take it or leave it. And that's why I love Clone Wars, but Rebels will always beat out Clone Wars for me.
So
it's
that
more
said,
complete.
And that's why I played. That's why I place the Bad Batch over Clone Wars as well.
Same.
So that said, I honestly thought I was the only one who did that. Like when you jump into Clone Wars, I have favorite arcs, like the Mortis arcs. But I don't tend to watch entire seasons. I do watch Rebels from beginning to end.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah. And we're getting people in the chat. There are plenty of confused and outraged that he had Clone Wars as 6.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did a video explaining. I did explain why I rated it as a number 6 because it's an anthology. It's like if you look at all 6 seasons of Clone Wars, and I'm sorry because Amber needs to tell us about her book, but just to clear this up, Clone Wars is 6 seasons. In each season, there's 3 or 4 arcs that you go through, and some of the arcs carry from season to season. So to say that I like all of those would be a lie when there are certain episodes I cannot stand.
That is true.
Like that one where the robots are walking around the place. I saw THX. I don't need to see it again. All right. And like my least favorite character in Star Wars is Cad Bane. I'm sorry, it is. I don't like Cad Bane. But
don't look at the thumbnail for this video.
It's just I don't like Cad Bane. I just never have. But that's just me. I'm not saying everyone else has got to put it at number 6. Put it at number 1 if you want.
No,
Put it at
that's
number
my
3.
thing, and that's what I love about our portion of the Star Wars fandom, where when I see it, you guys have a wildly different ranking than me. I get excited, like I want to talk to you and find out why. That's what drives the conversation, not like you did it the same as me. Cool, then you're cool. I don't know, that feels.
If we all like PB and J, we'd never have anything to trade at lunch.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna write that down and say I made it up. Just kidding, I won't do that.
and you can see that line in my book.
But yeah, let's get back to Amber. So we got your favorite movies. Your book. How would you pitch it to a Star Wars fan?
That would be interesting because my published books are actually would probably be considered cozy mysteries. They're kind of bordering into that territory. So it's a mystery, but it's a light mystery. There's a little bit of romance in it, a lot of humor. So I would say that people that enjoy Han and Leia banter, the Poe and Rey dynamic at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker, those types of character exchanges, then my rating would definitely be for you. But I have not, and I don't see myself ever going into the fantasy and sci-fi genre full force. I'm not a world builder. I'm a character builder and a dialogue person. So I enjoy reading sci-fi and fantasy. I love it, but it's not something that I don't think I'll ever really go into like from a writing standpoint, outside of like fanfic and one shots, things like that. That I will do. That I have done.
That's cool, and I know quite a few people that would absolutely be into that. So we'll have to check out some of those stories. And last but not least, we have Monty.
Okay. This is the manuscript for my next book, which is coming out in October. If you like pod racing and steampunk, that is the book for you. But the character I would like to talk about as a selling point is my Z105 series, which was supposed to be re-released as the Lycanthrope Syndrome in June of 2020. It was all set to be released, but it's about a worldwide pandemic that causes political division. So I decided to put that on hold for a little bit. Because my editor says I thought this was science fiction.
Oh.
It's a true story. I've got all the posters and all the merchandise downstairs just sitting there getting dusty. The editor said, "Do you want to publish it?" And I said, "Let me see. If they send hospital ships to LA and New York within the next month, I'll hold off on it."
Oh no.
Well,
timing is everything.
We now know who to blame.
But the lead character in that book is named Jilly, and she is my salute to every sci-fi nerd who's ever existed. Her costume in the cosplay, because I make the cosplays of all my characters, and then friends wear them for the book cover, and we go to cons together. Her costume is an anime skirt. She carries a Sailor Moon backpack, a denim jacket which is covered in con pins, and that's her armor. An R2D2 t-shirt, and a Doctor Who scarf. And she carries an axe. Right, that is her character. And she is a nerd she cannot fit in normal society. She speaks in movie quotes.
I like her.
In the one chapter, she's talking to a friend at work, and she says, "Why did you ever sleep with that man?" And she says, "He rolled a nat 20 when I was surrounded by night elves and come in there dropping fireballs. How could I not?" She's that kind of character. But she has trouble fitting in the world. But when the world goes to hell, She is the nerd. She is the one who can live outside of the norm. And she's actually like, she becomes almost like a counselor leader to everyone who is having trouble fitting into this new community which was forced to be built. And she becomes mayor.
He becomes what?
The mayor of the town. She becomes the leader.
That's cool. That's interesting. I'll have to, if you have any of that art I've led to up anywhere, I'd love to link it somewhere. But
Yeah,
we
sure.
have Pep here. The sequel is called On the Nose.
It was the sequel's actually called The Type Plan, which, because I thought that was a play on words, because this is type, but in my head it's funny, but it's not for anyone else.
Oh, and then also for anyone here or in the chat, if you're not already following Dyad in the Force, please do. That's Element 7, but that's also our other podcast that happens on Saturdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So, yeah, definitely check out Dyad in the Force. Anyhow, I know, Avery, you got to get going soon, right? You got stuff to do, so I guess I'll start with you. But after you go, this will become like an open forum thing.
Okay.
One of the reasons I wanted to get this group together is because I see these, like, people throw around the term lazy writing or this is bad writing, and none of those people are articulate in any way, shape, or form. So I am curious to get the perspective of people that write a lot. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it, what constitutes good writing, bad writing, and what is lazy writing. Avery?
Okay, good writing. Bear in mind, this is just me. Don't come for me. This is just my opinion. Good writing was the very end of Return of the Jedi, where Luke overpowers Vader, and has an opportunity to just completely to end him, and he's about to, until Palpatine steps in, and that is such a well-executed coming-of-age moment for Luke, because he realizes when he looks at his hand that he's already on the way. And if he goes down this path, which in his own way he does, but if he goes down this path right now, he's going to end up like this. And the moment in which he not only deactivates his lightsaber, but he throws it. He completely disarms himself against the most powerful dark conglomeration in the universe and says, I'm not going to be this guy. You can do what you will, but he even called him Your Highness. He's like, you may do as you will, but I'm not going to turn into him. And that's why Return of the Jedi is one of my favorites, because that scene right there, it is exceptionally well written. It was exceptionally well directed. And everybody in that, Mark Hamill, Ian McDiarmid, they played it to the nines. So that to me is what I look at as good writing. If I can move on, when I look at lazy writing, again, this is just not something I would have done. But in episode 3, something that really let me down was when Anakin made his turn, and Palpatine was electrocuting himself against Mace Windu's lightsaber. And that scene was used to describe how physically deformed he was. And I thought that was kind of a cop-out, and I thought it was kind of a sign of impatient writing, because Palpatine was so consumed by the dark side that it would have been very plausible for him to age naturally throughout the series and look like that deformed husk that we got in the original trilogy. But they rushed it, and I think it would have been so much better if Palpatine had not looked the way he did, but still been Darth Sidious for the remainder of episode 3, because like I said, it would have made sense for him to naturally age and progress into what we saw. They didn't have to do it immediately, and that just felt kind of like, hey, how do we convey this as quickly as possible? Oh, hey, let's do this. That was lazy to me. And my final point, and again, this is just my opinion, bad writing is Solo. Straight out, bad writing is Solo. This is not meant to disrespect anybody who likes Solo. This is just my
So, shots fired. No,
Oh, yeah,
go
but
ahead. Keep going.
This is not meant to disrespect anybody who enjoys the film. This is just me. Solo, there are so many crimes committed in Solo. Number one, it wastes a lot of great talent. Number two, its primary sin is it never really decides what it wants to be. Like, did 7 or 8 people get together and write this thing? And did they all have like conflicting opinions or something like that? Because, oh my goodness, the Kessel Run, what was that? Like,
Yes,
it's,
7
like,
people
like,
get together
what
and write
was
it.
the Kessel Run? And it's like, okay, the movie begins, it's a heist. No, it's about a slave revolution. Oh, Lando really is cool. And he is. He saved that movie. Oh, Lando's really cool. Let's focus on him. Oh, wait, no, this is about Solo. Oh, and hey, the chick from Game of Thrones is in here too. Let's not forget to use her. And then I keep forgetting Solo exists. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of people are going to come for me on this one, but Solo is just bad. Like, you can absolutely tell they reshot that movie, because if that's what they gave us, what failed? But again, that's just my 2 cents. I appreciate you guys listening to me. My DMs are open for anybody who wants to hate on me. So
I'm not hating on you. I'm just going to confirm it was 7 or 8 people who got together who couldn't agree on anything.
oh, that makes sense.
That was
Yeah.
the truth.
They were.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it was reshot quite a bit. The directors changed. They said the previous direction. Alden said he felt like he was acting like Ace Ventura.
That
With
tracks.
it, and that's not to say that the original directors weren't good. They're the ones that did like the Lego Batman movie, which is loved by everyone who loves Batman.
I haven't actually seen that yet.
Who knows what all happened by this, but yes, that one was plagued with a lot of issues. I still have fun with the movie Solo. I do agree it never knew what it wanted to be. But yeah, that's and again, everyone in chat, I mean, if you're here, you probably already know. This doesn't it's not to discourage anyone from liking Solo.
Not my intent at all. This is just my 2 cents.
Yeah, but they can never deny hand shot first in that movie.
Thank you.
Andy gave us Dallas Bryce Howard was on set with Ron Howard with that, and she fell in love with Star Wars, and that gave us Dallas Bryce Howard, which makes Solo probably the most important movie ever.
How about that?
Every clue.
I have a Camilla. Bad writing is the end of Padme's arc. What, you didn't think her just sitting in a room was being pregnant, and just dying of sadness wasn't good enough? I don't know.
She did get force choked, That's very. It's very important when a woman's having a child not to be choked first.
I actually had this discussion like
I'm going to write that down. It's a good one.
I was like, there were a million ways for that story to end, but losing the will to live, no.
Thank you so much. Really quickly, and I love Padme. Padme's like this queen. She rules over a planet. She's a very powerful senator. She commands the respect of everyone around her, and she dies of a broken heart.
See, but in my mind, that's the point of view of a character, but that's not what happened.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it okay. I hate that that's a point of view of a character, but it's not what happened. I mean, a woman pregnant with twins who's probably not getting appropriate medical care because they didn't even know she had twins, gets force choked and passes out on a planet of lava. She's going to have complications giving birth, and dying is not a crazy thing to happen. So there are reasons.
Palpatine was drawing a life force as well.
But you have a bunch of men observing and going, "Oh, she died of a broken heart." No, she died.
Ladies and gentlemen, I need to get to my night job, so I have to bow out now. But thank you very, very much for having me. It was nice to meet all of you. May the force be with you.
Yes. Have a good one. We'll bring you back for a full episode whenever you let me know what you want to come on for a topic. And be sure to send me the information so I can put links to anything you want people to read.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. You guys have a good night.
Alrighty. Have a good one, Avery. All right. And then there were 3. This is going to be a lot like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. No, I'm just wrapping my mind around just weird decision. And the Padme stuff for me personally, I think a lot of it came from just not having women in the writers' room.
Exactly what
And
it is.
Absolutely.
I still kind of laugh at like the forethought of like, okay, she dies, so we'll make her look like she's still pregnant, so no one knows. And then you're like, no, she would just look like that though. Like when you accidentally run into the point. Yeah.
You know, and I'm going to piggyback off that if you don't mind. That's why it was lazy writing more than bad writing, and I'll tell you a reason that I think that my main character in Z105 is a woman, but I also have several female characters, and I also have, although the main character in the Countess Rebecca is a man, I also have several female characters in that who are very important. And I was sitting there one night, right, and being the typical man, don't help me, right? So I was being there, and my wife said, "What's the matter?" And I says, "This is so frustrating. I've never had a period." She's like, and she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know what it feels like to, in this story, she's searching for feminine hygiene products, and I don't know what would be going through her head." And I said, I went to the store this afternoon. I'm walking up and down I'm none the wiser. She said, "Did you ask me?" I said, "No." She said, "Did you ask your daughters?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not asking my daughters that." And she said, "Well, you're never going to write it then, are you?" And I come out with this. It gave me one of the best funny moments in the book because I wanted to cause some conflict. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but that writing then gave me one of the funniest scenes because the girl says, like, Jill is the mayor of the town, but someone else goes to her, and the man's manhandling her because she started a fight, and she's like, "What's the problem?" And she tells her, and then she goes back out and talks to this lieutenant, and she's like, "You've got to understand, we need to fix some problems here, and we need to find some supplies. These women are fighting over pads, not tampons, pads right now. That's how important it is." And it gave me this really funny scene that a lot of my beta readers really liked because it showed I understood something about women. Whether I'm right or wrong, it showed me I understood something, right? And sorry, viewers, don't leave. But that's lazy writing because you have to go and ask, what would you as a female woman of the opposite sex do in this situation, and let them tell you and listen.
And
the same way as
that's actually one of my own issues because a lot of times, more often than not, my favorite characters are women in stories. Because when written well, they seem to have the most nuance. And I'm trying to write a story myself, and I'm running into that block head first of like, I'm not equipped to write this story. And I know that's kind of a cop out, but like we're getting through it. We're getting through it.
They want you to ask, Jocko. To ask.
I think that's I can have a little bit of an advantage because I'm a professional actor and I've played men. So having that experience where I'm actually working with other actors and going, can you give me some pointers on this, how to do this, okay. And so all of that, when I'm writing, I'm kind of coming into the writing process from the point of view of an actor, where I'm getting into the heads of these people the way I would on stage. And I have that kind of like arsenal of experiences that I got from being a professional stage actor and having those moments where you are asking, what does it feel like to be really for real? Like,
no, that's a good point. I mean, but plus, I mean, we have a lot of stories that are told from male point of views that can be used as reference. And so that was my first journey. Is I'm reading a lot more women written stories. So that's what I'm working on.
That's why the worst piece of writing is a woman judging herself in front of a mirror. If there's any prospective writers out there, please never do a woman judging her own body in front of a mirror. It's terrible writing. Thank you. This is the end of this PSA.
See, and I don't even get that. So,
am I right, ladies? Thank you.
All right. Yeah, but how about you, Amber? Your thoughts on the good, the bad, and the lazy.
So, um, I did like a quick little TikTok about this a while ago. That first off, just because as a writer, that doesn't make me an authority on what good writing, bad writing, lazy writing is. Because when it comes down to it, storytelling is about how the reader connects to the story. So if a reader connects to a story for them, that is good writing. Now, if you're talking about things like structure and flow and all, pacing, there are certain technical things that you can actually break down and say, okay, this is good, this is bad. But even there, when you're I was never a big on writing groups or writing classes, because I'm a pain in the butt. So I'm not the student that you want in those classes, but really you learn about the rules of writing so that if you understand the rules well enough, you know how to break them effectively. So even when it comes to, oh, well, you shouldn't do that, like to Monty's point, him talking about, you should never write a woman judging herself in the mirror. And in most cases, yes, if you're writing a story in first person and you want to describe the character who is telling that story, I wouldn't recommend that you have her look in a mirror and describe herself because people don't tend to do that. Now, can you ever have a character look at themselves in the mirror and say things about themselves? It depends on the character, it depends on the situation. It can be done effectively, but because it so often isn't, you know, we're going to tend to say, hey, yeah, don't do that because most people aren't going to do it effectively. So there are things that can be considered, people will go, oh, yeah, that's bad writing, but not necessarily. It just depends. So I always am hesitant to give anything, unless it's just awful, the bad writing label, because it just is dependent on the person reading it. There are things that are lazy, and I think with movies too, I judge that in a different way because in a movie, if there's something that would be very interesting and good for the story, but it's not moving the plot forward and it's not necessary to moving the plot forward, it's going to get cut because movies can only be so long. Now, in a book, if you leave that information out, I'm going to judge that a bit more. I'm going to say, well, that was lazy. You should have given us that detail. The book can take 16 hours. The movie can't. So there's a different view. And that's why, Star Wars in general, are there things that I think that there is laziness definitely in the way that Leia's arc gets developed within her trilogy. Same with Padme. I think all of them suffer by the third movie. They're not really being utilized. And I think Finn gets the same treatment in the sequel trilogy. I love Finn. He's one of my favorite characters, but I think there's a laziness to how his arc is treated by the third movie. But is it specifically definitely lazy writing, bad writing? It's subjective. It really depends on how the person is connecting. Now, if nobody is connecting to your story, then yeah, that's bad writing.
No, that's an interesting point because, like, even at its very core, Star Wars, while it did take from the hero's journey, it did do other things differently than others, and one of my favorite complaints is bad pacing when it comes to Star Wars because I think almost all of Star Wars is badly paced. And I think that's part of the charm. Like it needs a little bit. It's a little janky, and that's why you love it. It's your stuffed animal with a missing eye. That's kind of how I felt. Now, when talking about my story, Deidre says, "Please keep writing that though, because it's funny when it's done wrong." Listen, I want you to laugh at my jokes, not at me writing. But actually, Deidre, you're allowed. It's
That's why I gave up stand-up comedy. Everybody laughed at me.
well played. How about you, C?
Well, take a look at the Star Wars novels, the books. When it comes to good writing, bad writing, and lazy writing, I look at it as how well are they capturing characters we know, and telling stories, and essentially, not dismissing who they were and how they grew within the films, like actually becoming a reflection and using those as tools, and then adding their own. I think, for example, I think Timothy Zahn was great at taking the film characters from the original trilogy and telling new stories and setting it just 5 years later. And so you see slight differences, but they're logical differences. And then adding characters that had flavor, that had dimension. They weren't, single-sided cardboard cutouts. I mean, even C-3PO, I heard Anthony Daniels while reading the book. That kind of aspect. And then you have others where they don't resemble anyone I've ever seen before. I'm going, well, that they're calling this character Luke Skywalker, but have they seen Star Wars? Luke would never say that. That's what I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to say that's where I see I feel that's lazy, because I feel like
Weapon of the Jedi.
I feel like people went, I'm writing a Star Wars movie and he's a hero, so I'm going to write him this way. And I'm like, well, that's you're not doing it justice, and you're not taking that extra step. And that's just, in terms of those. And then, of course, again, like relying too much on the source material and not giving anything new to the story. And oh, let's constantly call back. Let's call back. Well, okay, great. But, we've seen the movies tell us something new. So that's what I look at in terms of those Star Wars novelizations and things like that, where you've got some great writers who knew exactly what they were doing and gave us some great characters who became canon. And then you have those that just went, and we are just going to conveniently forget about them. They never existed.
No. And I love how Camilla here says, when Star Wars isn't great, folks only blame writing. When it's good, folks always only praise the direction. We need to put more respect on the screenwriters' names when TV movies are amazing. That's just facts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that makes me want to raise another point. If you we're all writers here, and I'm going to respect Amber here by not saying bad writing, but I'm going to say conveniently misplaced writing is the flashback. It's like, as a writer, as soon as I hear flashback, I'm like, ugh, because flashbacks are writers' rabbit holes, because you can flashback in a flashback in a flashback. And then all you've got is, like, if you're old enough to remember the Lisa show, that's what you've got. So I cringe at flashbacks, because a flashback, by its very essence, is not moving the movie forward unless it's a lesson. So you can flash back to a lesson very well. But flashing back to breakfast that morning, to me, that is just sort of like, you can say that in the present. Like, at breakfast this morning, he told me to watch my step, and here I am standing in a puddle with my heel broken, right? That can be done. You don't have to flash back to breakfast where he's saying that to his wife, right? But in one thing that Kenobi did really well with its flashback was go back to a lesson. And it was fantastic. It was a fantastic lesson. People were saying that was great fan service. That's not fan service. That's great writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a lesson that they flashed back to that was present and relevant in the moment. So that's another thing I just wanted to bring up, flashbacks, because, I saw...
Don't ever watch the show Arrow.
I've watched the show Arrow, and they didn't just fail this city. See what I did there? But they gave us John Barrymore back after Doctor Who as well, so I can't complain. But but I saw somebody the other day, and they says and some new show had been, the Tales of the Jedi, and somebody says we're going to be getting Tales of the Jedi. Oh, there's a flashback to the Clone Wars in it. And I'm like, do you want to find out what the show's about first before you ask for a flashback to the Clone Wars? You know
Yeah,
what
no, that does get odd when the flashback starts to overshadow the story. I'm super excited for Tales of the Jedi.
Same here. I'm gonna love it.
But it would be weird asking for and it's different because I have Dixon download says as a lore freak I can't agree. If the plot is about the Sith, then flashbacks are necessary. I hope to see many in the Acolyte show, and I don't think that's quite what he was referring to. Like if you're flashing back to things, that would be to different time periods for lessons for things that would apply to the current plot or future, not just a look back just for looking back's sake.
If the story can move forward with it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Now, I was
Go
going
ahead,
to say, if I feel like if a good example is the difference between the use of flashbacks in The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Book of Boba Fett. Both Obi-Wan Kenobi and The Mandalorian were very, very, they had very specific judicious uses of flashback. And I felt like Boba Fett just kind of used it as a crutch for a lot of the scenes. And I felt like,
Yeah, I actually, at least how I felt about the Book of Boba Fett is, to me it felt like a show that may have been shot time wise linearly, and then they're like, okay, the beginning's too slow and the ending is too fast. We're gonna chop this bit up and we're gonna tell it at the same time as this bit, and we'll have them go in this chamber for when we do it. That's kind of how I felt about it. But yeah, I'm loving hearing your guys's thoughts. What is the what's your guys's like favorite example of good writing or good storytelling, of like you read a portion of, I don't know, a Star Wars book or saw a portion of the movie that really hit you, and like you're like, dang, that was so well encapsulated, you want to move forward with it. Anything jump out with you like that?
Does somebody else want to go first?
Monty, you're up.
I was being polite, right? Yes. Opening act. For those of you who Save the Cat, the first 6 beats of Light of the Jedi was writing perfection as far as pacing, introducing the universe, introducing the world and the situation we were in. To me, I read the opening third of Light of the Jedi, and I was like, that's it done right. That is done right.
Mm-hmm. Love that book.
And yeah,
for anyone not reading the High Republic, do.
Yeah, I mean, I every time I'm like, when's the next one? When's the next one? And I can't wait for more. And it all comes down to that opening 1/3 of a book that was Light of the Jedi.
Yeah. And how about UCE or Amber? Any thoughts? Now I can't hear you again, Amber.
Oh no! I'm trying to think of like anything that was specific to a moment.
I mean, so for me, and I'll go into the book Lost Stars, by Claudia Gray, which it tells the story in the background, with the background of the original trilogy. So we have these 2 new characters who are joining this Imperial Academy because they want to be pilots, and the entire original trilogy happens, and we were just following these 2 through their journey throughout and what's happening in the galaxy. And let me tell you, imagine being stationed on the Death Star when it blows up Alderaan. Imagine you work for the Empire and that happens and you're supposed to be happy about it. And the way that whole scene, that whole portion was written was like powerful, because you could be from Alderaan and stationed on the Death Star. How do you feel about that moment, and who can you confide in with how you feel? That part, just like, I don't know, it just made me, that part made me want to start writing, like it was like, I need to tell more stories like this. I like how this makes me feel, so that's one that jumps out at me. Amber, you back? No.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
I would say, like, I think there were like moments for me, and actually New Jedi Order, which again is just like that overlooked, it's New Jedi Order. You just don't Bond, nobody cares. I think that there were a lot of moments where there were certain things, just when you feel a gut punch when you're reading something, and that happens quite a bit in that series.
It does.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it was really well handled by, as the books went forward. I feel like the first Vector Prime didn't really grab me, but afterwards, when the other writers were jumping in and writing simultaneous books happening at the same time, and pulling in characters that they had already written, and really kind of expanding upon that, and then I just think that those were some of the moments where I was, in reading a book, I was like, I'm sitting here, these are characters based on Star Wars films that aren't even necessarily like the characters from the movies, and I'm in tears, I'm feeling angst, I'm and it was, I thought it was those were some beautiful examples of good writing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Yuuzhan Vong are disgusting and they're gross and I hate them.
They are.
I stopped reading Star Wars books for a while because of the Yuuzhan Vong. I was like, I read Vector Prime, I tried the next one, and then I jumped right until where, spoiler alert, Jania kills the leader of the Vong. My buddy come in, and he's
now, and you're also in someone that Jaina is my all-time favorite Star Wars character.
She's yes, Styx is amazing. Yes,
absolutely, and so that's that thing that book series did, is clearly rose up her and Anakin, in my opinion, rest in peace, King.
It also made Jason's fall to the dark side even that much more powerful.
Yeah,
knowing, like, and I'll be truthful with you, I have still only read the cliff notes of the Vong, because it's just not my cup of tea,
Yeah.
I think I just got a number alert.
And that's perfectly okay. But CE, if you haven't started reading the High Republic, if you want those gut punches, they happen in the High Republic.
Yeah, it's on my Kindle. I haven't started. I was in other series, so like outside of Star Wars. So I'm now back to my. I've got them, like I've got 3 of them right now downloaded and ready to go. So
I have to play in my workshop constantly.
It's far enough back to where you don't know what the fate of any given person is. So there's some real stakes. And sometimes they're mean to us. Amber, how are we doing? No.
They're downright sadistic to us, actually, in parts.
Oh, well, Amber was going to bring up Bloodline, also by Claudia Gray.
Yeah.
And that book, that book floored me, because I think I had just started getting into reading the canon books when that book came out. And I was like, I'm not certain I want to read a book about like a middle-aged Leia. I'm sorry. And then I was so wrong that I had to change my perspective on like everything. Um, Also, side note, rereading that book in 2020 was horrifying.
Ah,
Just for anyone,
What I
yeah,
thought was good about Bloodline, as a middle-aged person who used to be a soldier, reading that book is powerful.
yeah.
You know, because she's having to resign herself to the fact that she's not a soldier any longer. Did we lose someone else?
Uh, yeah, Amber's having trouble with her
Okay.
audio. I'm sure she'll pop back in.
But as a middle-aged person, Claudia Gray, and you know, one of the greatest days of my life was meeting Claudia Gray. I totally fanboyed out on her, but I better walked away from her. She was like, "Who was that English dickhead?" You know, because I totally fanboyed out on her, and I'm like, I've never fanboyed out on anyone, but it was Claudia Gray, you know, and the nicer she was being, the more fanboy I was getting. You know, which was like, please stop, you know, like stop talking something, and but the Bloodline was powerful, and you know, I think now if I had to pick three books out that I would say accompany the story of Star Wars as a writer, I would say Brotherhood, Dark Disciple, and Bloodline.
Yeah, no, that's a great. I've never thought about it that
Mhm.
way, but all three of those
Yeah.
are bangers.
You know, it really just sums up this an Alphabet Squadron as well, because I like the stories about the little guy.
Oh, yeah, Alphabet Squadron is goaded, and I wish more people would read it. But I try to convince them, but they haven't yet.
Yeah,
I'm also excited because we have Padawan that's coming out by Kristen White.
yeah.
So I
29th,
just received my
right?
copy. Yes, I believe it releases on the 29th.
Yeah.
Which means
Um,
I have some reading to do if I'm going to get my review out by then.
I
Um,
you posed a brilliant question in the portfolio itinerary, sorry, that you sent to us, and that was if we could rewrite one part.
yes. Well, real quick, Amber, can we hear you? No. What changed? I don't know what
I
could
don't
have
know.
changed. Wait, I heard that.
Oh,
Yeah.
There.
What did you just do?
I have no idea.
I'm so confused right now.
And it's crazy because this is like the setup I've used for like every other podcast I've been on, so I don't know what's going on. I did switch to my husband's work headset that may or may not have that much battery, so we'll see how long it lasts.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll have to go fast. um, Tell us what you wanted to say about Bloodline. And then since we don't know how long we'll have here, um, we'll go into the next question, which is if you could, punch up or rewrite something in Star Wars, what would you choose?
I think before I hopped off, you were talking about some of why Bloodline like really. I liked that. I don't want parallels to be too on the nose, but I do like when the writing you can connect to, even if it's not obviously it's a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, but everything that was going on with Leia was so relatable. And you know, reading middle-aged Leia, being a middle-aged mom myself, was a great thing to see. Like it was good to see the character that I loved, but to actually see more of the development of that character, because we really don't get that in the original trilogy. We get little hints of her, but we really don't see all of her potential. And Bloodline, I thought, just it did such a great job with that. And I was never a big Han, like, yeah, she likes it was kind of like, yeah, it's every story they always like that guy, but Han was a lot more lovable, but still very Han in
Yeah.
Bloodline. Um, and characters that like, I hate this character, but then also I understand this character. I love when a story can do that. That's one of the reasons I love Rogue One, is because a lot of those characters kind of dwell in the gray. And I'm very much a good guy person. I'm usually not like rooting for the villainous character. Um, but I do like characters that aren't like 100% one or the other. I like there to be some complications there and figuring out who they are and everything. So I think Bloodline also did that well with some of the characters that we didn't know prior to the book. So I that's why that's probably one of my favorites.
I could straight up read a book about Greer or about Ransom, or like there's so many when the story has characters, you're like, that person is so well fleshed out without being the main character that I would love to have more. I think that's really cool. But yeah, if you could, and I can always come back to you if I'm putting you on too much on the spot. But if you could rewrite or punch up anything in Star Wars, what would you pick?
I go back and forth between giving Padme a satisfying ending. I have headcanons for ways that she could have faked her death and continued to be, somehow involved with Leia's life, but not directly, and be part of the inspiration. I love that Kenobi gives us why Bail and Breha are inspiring to Leia, because that was needed. But I also love the idea that Padme is somewhere in the wings, also inspiring her child, even though her child may not know that that's her mother who is doing these things, that she's secretly part of the rebellion, getting started, helping Bail in ways that keeps her safe, but still, she has to live in secret, and how difficult that can be. And then you can give her a more satisfying, she can still die, but years later, Leia may never get to actually meet her. Her memories of her mother may actually be memories from something where she did have contact with her when she was very small. So I go back and forth between wanting to fix that, and I really love the sequels. There's a lot of things in Rise of Skywalker I didn't love, so I think that's probably the one that would edge out fixing Padme's arc, is making changes to the final movie of the sequel trilogy that give Finn the story that he deserves, and there are things that I didn't love that I'm like, I could leave that as is, but I think giving Finn a more satisfying arc in the sequel trilogy would be not only just great to have, but would be satisfying to write.
Mm-hmm.
And not making Poe a drug runner. That would have been great.
Yeah, choices were made.
That went nowhere. It went absolutely nowhere. That relationship that he had with I can't even remember the character's name.
Story.
Yeah, and like, she was a fantastic character, and it just went nowhere. That was my biggest gripe.
I will say Rise of Skywalker is C-3PO's best film, and he was an absolute delight throughout.
And it gave us Dio.
And it gave us Dio.
And Boba Frick.
Baba Frick.
Boba Frick.
He's a great. I know what we're talking about.
I love it. I can tell the sea has something really good, so I'm gonna make you go last.
What? No.
Oh, I felt like you have something really good.
I actually was exactly on the same page, like 100% with the Padme. Like, that was my answer. Like that.
Okay.
I
Well,
wanted
any
to
elaboration?
rewrite her. I actually had I saw that her, yes, being surviving it, having something to do with helping Rhea and Bail raising Leia, being involved in the early days of the rebellion, but with, from the shadows. Obviously, she can't show her face, but with having those little connections and dying heroically, nobly, not what happened. She was such a powerful, strong character from the Phantom Menace on. Despite some of the stilted dialogue and wooden acting, she was still a great character. And that was something I just felt like her ending was so unsatisfying to me, especially with that line from Return of the Jedi. You know, she was very beautiful, kind, but sad, but she never saw her. So that was something that really just, if I could go and I had my hands on anything, that would be what I would do. So.
The only reason I wouldn't want to do it personally, like me do it, is because I defer to Camilla. I want Camilla to write it because her love for Padme. I feel like she'd give her what she deserves. So I just want to be on the team.
Well, that would be elite.
I think it would need a team of women writers. That's one thing that men have got to say. Let's take our hands off that one because we screwed it up. Let's give that one to people. You know what I mean? It's like, I think she deserves a female writer, and I want that to be taken as a compliment and not as a, you know what I mean? Not as a sexist thing. I want her to be written by a woman because Claudia Gray did it so well, and she did it so well in Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and she writes women so well and thoughtful and deeply, and that character needs their love. But I do have a question that just popped into my head as I was listening to. Is it Claudia or Sia? How do you prefer it?
Oh, see, Groom actually is what everybody calls me. So,
okay. So this is for Groom and Amber. If that story went back and they did a Council of the 2000, which showed her strengths, and they wrote something in there that made her say, like, she knew it was going to be a difficult birth, but decided not to say anything to Anakin because she knew how he was, would that give you the satisfaction?
No, because I still think that it's a little too like, woman dies by child. For me, woman dies by childbirth. Like, especially a character like Padme, who is so strong and could have done so much more, I would still feel robbed. I would still feel that she was fridged for the sake of Anakin. Would it be more satisfying than what we got? I mean, marginally. But I think I still would have been like, man, why she got to go out like that?
Yeah.
Like, I think only if Anakin had actually killed her.
Okay.
Like, if in attacking her, he actually caused her death, and the twins survived. That's the only. Yeah, but I mean, I never saw. I know that she can't be alive for the original trilogy, but I feel like there were ways that you could have removed her and still had her be the heroic character that she was.
Well, if she was on Alderaan when it blew up,
that would be terrible.
But we would you could put her in between.
And now you lost her.
And now, so you'd have all of that story in between.
Yeah, I mean, fun fact, she was originally supposed to survive childbirth and be alive for over 6 months before passing away. At least that's what George's original ideas was. But Monty, what are you going to choose to punch up or rewrite?
I've got one that'll do emotional damage, and I can say it in like 2 minutes. But my main one's a bit bigger, so if you'll indulge me for a moment, I would like to see a certain point of view where Mace Windu says, if Anakin is correct, as soon as we return from seeing Palpatine, I'm making him a full member of the Council. That's just a certain point of view thing I'd love to put in there for Mace Windu, just to raise that emotional damage a little further. But the one thing I would change as a writer, if I could go back and do it, would be if we had to bring back, and this is my major gripe with the Clone Wars, I'm not a fan, and I never have been a fan of bringing Maul back, as much as I love Maul as a character. But it's the way he was brought back. So if I was going there and wrote it, we know that Palpatine was on Naboo like days or even hours after the battle, right? With Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon. If Palpatine had rescued Darth Maul and the experiments that led to Darth Vader's suit were actually the experiments that were done on Darth Maul, but Darth Maul was too weak in Palpatine's eyes. That could have given us so much more story than we got. He still could have had his showdown, but make Maul the early experiment for what Anakin became, like the mechanics and everything, to see if the Force could still travel through electronics and everything. If they'd have used,
Good idea. I
Yeah,
like
if-
that a lot.
if they'd have used Maul as the guinea pig and then they could have dismissed him, it means that we still could see a fact that if the Emperor said he was my failed experiment, now kill him, like that, and he sends Vader to kill the apprentice, it would also have a flashback to Darth Bane with the Xana story. There'd be a parallel there. And I just think fans would have eaten that up a lot easier than it was my Aita that kept me alive. That old. I've known hatred in my life, and it kept me awake at night. I don't think it could keep me alive for 5 years.
Gave me indigestion, but that's about it.
Yeah, I got the agita from it. He didn't have to worry about that. His guts were hanging out though. He's open from the top and tip. But sorry, I write zombie novels. Yeah, it's a flip top Sith. But I think if they'd have done that and the Emperor would have had Maul would have been his failed experiment. And they could have done that, and then that would have led to Darth Vader, especially if the Emperor had have said the suit needs to be more painful, And then that would tie into, I know it's not canon that the suit is painful, but I saw them spikes in Kenobi and where they went. That's got to be uncomfortable. When I was on dialysis,
Yeah.
I had a peritoneal dialysis for 6 months. It's painful. So,
It surely didn't look like it tickled. I have Dixon Download say that was Grievous, representing the mechanics that Vader would become. But I do really like the idea of it being experimented on with a Force sensitive person specifically, and that could give us the true lesson on how much on how exactly having the cybernetics affects Vader's connection to the Force, how it can affects his strength. Like it could do a lot of things telling us about Vader without actually telling us about Vader if that person was Force sensitive. And also Grievous got cooler, especially he was coolest in the 2D animation. He was just a menace in that thing. But in Revenge of the Sith specifically, I actually kind of hated him because he just showed up. He was just like, we have to fight that guy. I was like, who is that guy? They seem to have kind of villains that just showed up each film.
Yeah.
But okay, well, along that lines, we will let's see here. All right, I'm going to do something bold, and I'm going to have us collapse all the rest of this into our last go around here. All right. So we talked about what we would change, what we would mess around with. If you got the green light to tell any story in Star Wars, so you can get as creative or tell a story about someone we know or find a different time period, it's whatever, the world is your oyster. What story would you tell? And then also, us Star Wars geeks, we spend too much time in our niche. Do you have any book recommendations for us that might get us outside but still have us interested? And then lastly, if you have any closing thoughts and where we can find you and your amazing content. All right. I know that's a lot of stuff. Hopefully you remember. Ask me if you forget anything. Let's see here. Let's actually go with Monty first.
Okay. If I was going to recommend a book series to anyone that's not Star Wars, Dresden Files. Absolutely.
Damn it! That was mine.
It does still have a Padawan, but it's Dresden Files is 12 months, comes out in October, by the way, Groom.
Oh my gosh!
been
The
confirmed.
last one was a little too long. It was a little too. And I take issue with anytime somebody gets fridged. So I had problems with the last one, but I still a Dresden fan.
Yeah. I was still asking why for 3 months after the last one, but I don't want to spoil anything. But Dresden Files would definitely be my book. I was going to save the first part for last. Final thoughts on
Well,
writing.
you know what? Why don't we make this first part a lightning round, right? Everyone
Okay.
just says their book recommendation that's non-Star Wars. So for you, Dresden Files.
Absolutely.
See, I'll give you time to think up a new one. Amber, what would you say?
I'm really terrible with this because I lately I'm just consuming Star Wars books when I have time to read. I'm a mother of two neurodivergent children who I homeschool, so a lot of my non my reading time is often doing lots of research. So I'm lots of nonfiction
Yeah.
and probably not the things that people are looking for. The only book that I've read recently that wasn't Star Wars was actually Zachary Levi's book that he just put out called Radical Love. It's a book on it's nonfiction, but it's he talks a lot about his struggles with mental health. And it was a really good read, especially if you do the audiobook if you are a fan of his. But other than that, I'm just
am.
listening to other. If you're a fan of his and a fan of mental health, and I recommend the audiobook because he does the audio since it's his story.
That's interesting. Yeah, I will have to check that out. I think mental health is something we just don't talk about and probably should. Um, I did doing the audiobook of The Princess Diarist, which is Carrie Fisher's book, was awesome. And yes, those things are very interesting. And how about you, C?
Okay, so the only thing outside of Dresden Files, damn it, I would have to say probably recently that I've read that I really enjoyed with old series that I just discovered for the first time. Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings, specifically the Fitz and Fool stories. Are those are the ones that I really enjoyed. So anyway, yeah.
Awesome. All right.
That's your standard epic fantasy. Since my urban fantasy got stolen.
It's because it's so good. That's why two of us thought of it.
There are so many Star Wars references. Like it's peppered. It's not just Star Wars, like pop culture in general. But I mean, there's a Star Wars poster in the first book.
What is it?
It's Harry Potter for grown-ups.
Yes, but with film noir and a lot of geek references.
And buy the audio books because James Marsden reads them, who played Spike in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and his accents and his voice is amazing. And if he doesn't get to play Dresden when they met the movies, damn you, universe, because give him a pair of stilts, he can play the role.
All right. I mean, he's my
Jocko. You'll love him. It's just
Jim Butcher's he's a LARPer and he's a nerd and I love it. I'm like, this is my man.
And I started writing by writing LARPs.
That's awesome.
So that's where I started. I was writing LARPs, and people used to say, why don't you write a book? And that when I lost my eyesight, my wife said, why don't you write a book? And I wrote the book out of spite to prove I couldn't, and then 250,000 people bought it.
Dang. Okay, that's cool. Sold. All right. So I'll start with you, C. So no one can steal anything from you because that's happened a couple times. All right. So You can write anything in Star Wars. Yeah, so we'll have you do the rest of it. If you can
I would.
write any stories, and then also if you have any closing thoughts on this episode and where we can find you.
Okay. So if I could, I would want to do something new. I would want to actually springboard off of the. It's even with all the problems in the sequel trilogy. I would want to actually take some of those characters and give them the love they deserve, and take them off on new adventures and have that be where I kind of start from and start finding what are the stories that after, because prior to everything, I was always interested in what happened after Return of the Jedi, and not knowing, and while the in between the trilogies for the prequel and the original is still a really wonderful area, and same thing now with between the original trilogy and the sequels is still a ripe area for storytelling. I like the idea of the wide unknown. So, and back in the Return of the Jedi era in 1983, it was the wide unknown, and that's the stuff that I would write fan fiction about. So,
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and yeah. So, but it's funny because we've talked about the female characters and with Bloodlines. One of my major characters is a middle-aged mother of a teenage son in the book, and it's a character that's resonated with a lot of readers. So I like the fact that all of my, except for like two, I think all of my female characters in the novel are over the age of 35, and so are most of the men. And you do have your elements of coming of age. There is that kind of chosen one elements, and again, but most of it is focused on the arc of the tragic hero as depicted in the 5-arc structure of your traditional Greek and Shakespearean plays. So that's what I do. You can find me at cegroomwrites.com.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. And I've loved your content since the very first video. I was like, oh, that's an instant follow. Like, I can't hit this fast enough. And I've been enjoying it ever since. So appreciate you coming
Thank you.
on.
I appreciate being invited on.
Absolutely. And how about you, Monty?
What would I do? Picture the scene. It's Tatooine. It's the Skywalker hovel, whatever you'd call it, the Krull. But now it's surrounded by grass and trees, and there's a tower being built. And Legends fans, Rasha Keen comes walking up with Chewbacca and goes to Rey and said, "The Jedi helped us once before. Kashyyyk is being rebuilt, and now the Trandoshan hunters are back. We're calling on you as the new Order of the Light to come and help us." And as they go to the planet of Kashyyyk, which is like on the outer mid-rim, they get there, they fight off the Trandoshans and accidentally stumble upon the Gris on a tour, and the Gris becomes the new enemy in much the same way the Yuuzhan Vong did, but with nicer villain. And that is the start of the new order. And in that order, you already have Finn trained as a Jedi, but he's a way seeker. And you also see, for those of us who've read Shadow of the Sith, we also see a orange lacquered Twi'lek who helped some of the people escape Ben Solo who were in hiding, and they are part of her order, and that is how the new Order of the Light starts, and that starts off our new era of Star Wars. I thank you.
Awesome. I love it. I feel like a lot of us are having on similar wavelengths. But real quick, where can we find you and your content?
You can find me on TikTok. That's where I do most of my content, to be honest. My website is www.montgomeryharris.com, but I think I updated it in, when did COVID start? You can, if there's a steampunk con or a con near in the northeast area, you'll probably find me doing a panel there. And I am booked for 2 panels, and maybe one of my short play is being performed at Key City Comic Con in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania this year.
Super cool. As
Thank
always,
you for having me on.
I appreciate every time you come on. As we get deeper into like this mysterious figure that is Monty, it's just fascinating. Um, and real quick, one of my thoughts that was kind of on the similar wavelength is, as I've always wanted to tell a story of, the new Jedi School has started. The top instructors are obviously going to be Ray and Finn, since they've been there the longest, teaching a new generation of kids. But I want Ray to sense something is happening out in the galaxy. So she goes to investigate while Finn stays behind. And obviously, Finn is nowhere near as powerful in the Force, but he still has all this training and stuff from his time as a stormtrooper that helps back him up with learning how to fight and all this stuff. Well, I would love it if something happens, Ray's gone missing, and we don't really know why. And he has to travel and find her, and he's finding different um, he stumbles upon remnants of the acolytes of beyond, people who worship the Sith. Some of them may have middling abilities in the dark side, and he is having trouble because in the Force he's not strong enough to be what he feels he needs to be to save her. And because he's so upset about this, I mean, Rise of Skywalker had him just running around screaming Ray all the time. Um, we have him start to access the dark side and learn that there's a pool of power there that he can draw on. And so it becomes a race against time between, if he doesn't draw on this, can he save her? And if he does draw on this, who will he be by the time he gets to that point? Meanwhile, we'll have her still kicking ass and doing stuff, and
Nice.
but I would like to see that struggle of actually having someone drawing upon the dark to try and do something good, and having a slow drip of them starting to lose themselves and have to understand, um, if I were to save her now, she wouldn't want me around, type of thing. Anyways, that was just one of my thoughts. But last but certainly not least, we have Amber.
Okay, so if I had the green light, one, I would use it to get my kids' idea in, because my 12-year-old just came up with an idea recently. And he's a pretty good writer for a 12-year-old. But he decided that because Star Wars is long ago in a galaxy far away, what if um, the Force was found in modern day planet Earth? What if something broke off in an asteroid that had kyber crystal in it, and it's discovered by a group of kids, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids? And these kids, having grown up on the stories of Star Wars and the Force, get to figure all of it out and have to fight some sort of evil. It sounded very much like he was kind of combining like kind of Stranger Things vibes with Star Wars. And honestly, when he described it, it sounded pretty fun. So I'd probably try and get my green light in there for him. But the story, one of the things I would love to write, and I think I've talked to you about this before, is I really think it would be fun to take Set Hearth from the Bane trilogy
Yes.
and use him to write stories through time, because I would make it that Set Hearth did figure out immortality. And so he's been existing through all of the Star Wars timeline from that period forward. But because he's done something he really shouldn't have, he kind of exists behind the scenes. And so we get to see different stories we've seen through different perspectives. And he kind of accidentally affects a lot of the things that take place throughout the Star Wars timeline. So we could get new stories that we've never been told, but we also get fun little breaks in there where, oh, wait a minute, whatever he's doing here, whatever chaos he's involved in, is actually something that caused the domino effect that made this happen in a story that we know really well. So I just think it would be fun to do something where it's almost like you get to do little vignettes throughout
Mhm.
Star Wars
I love
history,
that.
and it would allow you to see so much of Star Wars, but all through the kind of through the eyes of this one minor character who is a pretty fun. I think he would be a really fun character to see more of that personality. So that's what I think would be fun to write.
He is a
I
really
would
fun
like.
character.
Have you listened to the Dr. Aphra audiobook?
I have not. It's on my list of things.
It's so good because it's exactly the same story that's in the comic, but she's an unreliable narrator in the audio play. So it plays off exactly what you were just saying then, in a not like it meshes like wire, but it's that kind of idea that you were saying, which is different from a certain point of view, but also shows the different narration of an existing story. So I'm going to recommend you listen to that because it's
Yeah,
only like 6 hours.
I have to bump that up on my list of things
Okay.
to listen to.
Yes, and it is a full audio drama, and yeah, it is a good one because it's her speaking into a recorder, like recording her thoughts on these things and being like, you know what, I probably gave you too much detail there. I might come back erase this part later and like stuff like that. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Also, a shout out to the Conspiracy Cantina for the donation. We absolutely appreciate it always, and it makes it always helps in making these podcasts. And I love talking to you guys, anyways. But yeah, thank you so much for that. And Amber, where can we find you and your content?
Mostly on TikTok and Twitter. TikTok, I am Amber N Medina, and on Twitter, I am Amber West. And my books can be found on Amazon under Amber West.
All right, perfect. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you everyone in the chat. Dixon Download, if you're still here. Conspiracy Cantina. Nidra loves cosplay. Camilla always. Travis, Divad, Sanders, and Jedi Dick Sensei. Escape Reality Films, CJ. Yeah, everyone. We always appreciate having like. I love it because like I have the nicest chat of any like live show, and it makes me happy all the time. But once again, thank you guys for joining us this week. Please be back to join us next week here on the High Ground. But until then,